Hello, and welcome to the Sustainability Sessions. I'm Adam Bell, the Delivery Director of Moment, a sustainability-focused marketing agency. In this series, we're talking to business leaders and sustainability experts about the most pressing problems facing our people and the planet. I'm delighted today to be joined by someone who's on the same mission, consultant Hannah Keartland. Hi Hannah, how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
So I'd love just to start really with getting a little bit more of an understanding about you, if that's okay. Your background, the various roles you've had, and what's led you up to what you're doing today.
So I started life as an accountant, so I've always kind of been in the business world, and so I started very much with sort of within corporate, working with corporates, and then I moved into the charity sector, worked with an international development charity doing everything back office that was involved in running a charity. So, finance, legal, HR, banking up the money, taking it to the bank, cleaning out the cupboard where we were storing all the marketing materials, anything that needed to be done. Then moved into a finance role at Innocent Drinks, so working in a sort of for-purpose company. And from there, I then moved back into the charity sector and into a project management role, because I didn't want to do a sort of pure finance role anymore. I wanted to use those commercial skills in a sort of more holistic way. So I went to Cancer Research UK when they were establishing the Francis Crick Institute, which is a massive biomedical research institute, big collaboration across a number of different organisations. Worked there for a fantastic program manager, and once working with him on that project, and then he on a very long piece of elastic let me work on projects all around the organisation, which was amazing because I got to work in pretty much every single directorate. So I worked in HR, worked in research, worked in information communication, worked with fundraising, and so got a great overview of how an organisation works, how all the different bits of the organisation come together, and also learned how to deliver change effectively. And that saw me then end up in innovation, working on a variety of innovation projects in the research space, in the information space, looking at sort of real human-centered design and how to engage sort of harder to reach groups with information. So the sort of groups we weren't engaging with, how do we do that? And then I moved into fundraising innovation, really leading on the organisation's response to disruption, looking at how we could generate completely new income streams. So I left there 2 years ago, and looking at my background, I sort of see there as being 4 different areas that come together. So you've got that sort of commercial, operational, how does a business come together? How does it actually work at that sort of operational level? Then the delivery and change piece, the innovation piece, how do you make new stuff happen? How do you really stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions? And then the for-purpose piece. So, I've worked in impact for many years. I've got experience like making decisions that are about much more than financials. And I know how to do that sort of balancing act. So now what I'm doing is looking at kind of, well, what sits in the middle of all of those different 4 bits of experience. And so what I'm doing now is helping values-based business leaders know what steps to take to build an environmentally and socially responsible business.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic, and what a wonderful background to come from, to have that full picture piece from which to consider sustainability and what it means for business. So within what you're doing now, do you have a particular focus on any sectors or sizes of business, or is it really making it as applicable as possible?
It's a good question, and it's something I'm still exploring. I think based on my background, it makes I'm exploring the consumer goods sector. So sort of building on that background within Innocent, that the food and drink sector it's interesting to me. It's a sector I do have an understanding of, and it's also a sector where there's a lot of work to do in terms of sustainability. equally, I mean, that would come across into the fashion industry as well. Looking at that sort of consumer goods space, in terms of size of business, I'm sort of working more with medium-sized businesses, established businesses. What's most important to me, rather than the size, is actually that the leadership within the business want to change. So I don't want to be convincing people that this is the right thing to do. I want to go in at a stage where the leadership know it's the right thing to do. They want to build a more responsible, more sustainable business, but they don't quite know where to start, and they want someone to help them navigate that journey. So for me, it's that mindset piece where they know that they want to change, and they just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, and I think certainly in terms of the business stage as well, that really resonates. And I know that one thing we've touched on in the past is this idea, especially coming from our perspective as marketers, that sustainability's had a seat potentially within marketing, and potentially more so on the pure comms side, and terms around greenwashing and things like that. And I think what's really refreshing is actually having that organizational viewpoint to do good first, and then communicate about it. Is that something you've experienced throughout your journey so far?
I think it's an absolute minefield. I think it's a really good question, because I think there is and there has been a lot of greenwashing. There's been a lot of sustainability, which is, it's talked about and it's a marketing sheen because that's what consumers want to hear. And I think a lot of organizations, certainly historically, have had sustainability, they've had CSR sort of hived off into a small function, and that's where it happens, and now we can get on with running the main business. And what I think needs to happen to sort of achieve the level of change that we need to achieve is for businesses to be integrating sustainability and sustainable business practice throughout their entire business model and their operating model. So it's not just a couple of people over there doing it, it's literally saying at a strategic level and in a board level conversation, that how do we operate in a sustainable way? How is that just part and parcel of our strategy going forward? How does that then trickle down? So it is just a core part of the organization and how we do business. It's integrated into our procurement processes, into how we make decisions, into who we hire and how we hire. It is just part and parcel of how we operate as an organization and what we will and won't do. And that balancing act between financial and non-financial value is just core to how we operate as an organization, rather than something which is sort of tacked on as an afterthought.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that something you are hearing from within a lot of organizations? I think what's been quite interesting for us on this journey so far, we're going through our own B Corp accreditation. We've been looking at the Better Business Act, things like that, and the whole doing right because doing right is the right thing to do, and then and then, as you say, everything follows. Do you think that is becoming more front of mind within business at large?
I think it's patchy. I think there are certainly a lot more organisations now who are doing it because it's the right thing. There is still an awful lot that aren't. I think you've got a spectrum really. You've got the businesses where the mindset is about doing it because it's the right thing and actively wanting to play a role in making the world a better place. And that is a fundamental sort of mindset shift. You've then got the businesses who are doing the right thing because it makes business sense. They need to do it from a regulatory point of view. The consumers are demanding it, employees are demanding it, investors are demanding it. Maybe if they're buying from government, the government procurement process is starting to demand it. So there's more and more of a business case that this is the right business thing that they need to do. But that's why they're doing it. They're not doing it because of a sort of moral imperative. They're doing it because it makes business sense. And then you've got the businesses that are sort of clinging on to the traditional way of doing things. And I think all organisations they've got to change, and the ones that succeed are going to be the ones that do change and don't sort of cling to the old way of doing things. I think there's then a question around that sort of mindset shift, and I like to think that the ones where there is the mindset shift and there's a very different sort of leadership and a different sort of mindset, those are going to be the ones that are going to be really successful, because they're always being proactive and going ahead of the regulations. They're changing before they need to. They're constantly reinventing themselves and willing to change. I like to think that they will be the ones that will be most successful. I think what we're also going to see, though, is we're going to see increasing demand from consumers, employees, investors, etc., and increasing regulations, especially off the back of COP26. So actually those companies that are doing it because the business case stacks up and because they have to do it are going to be pushed further and further along. And hopefully, whilst they go on that journey, we will start to see some mindset shifts at leadership level because of going on the journey. And we will also start to see, some people moving out of those leadership positions, and other people who have maybe sort of different philosophy about business then starting to move into leadership, especially as we see a generational shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is that's a very familiar trend from our experience. I think another thing that we've noticed a lot of is the further we go in our sustainability journey, just how multifaceted the topic is. So all of the environmental aspects, all of the more human aspects, all of the sustainable development goals, things like the B impact framework, for example. How do you, in the work you're doing now, tend to approach such a broad topic?
I think a good starting point is working with the leadership team to understand what responsible business means to them, because not every business can do everything. So yes, there's some stuff in the B impact assessment which can be really helpful in terms of the kind of foundational building blocks to put in place. Especially some of the governance stuff. There's some really helpful stuff there. I think when you then get into like the SDGs, you cannot have every business tackling every single one of the SDGs. It's just too broad. So then I think the conversation moves to, where does it make sense for you to play? What's the impact that you can have? Which are the SDGs that resonate with you as a leadership team, with you as a business? And then let's come up with a vision for what responsible business means for you as a leadership team, for you as a business, that is authentic to you. And once we've got that vision and we understand where we are now, then we can start mapping out a route to get there. And yes, there will be some quick wins. Yes, there might be some things that most businesses will do because they make sense and they're good foundations of responsible business. But once you then start to get into some of the more impact, SDG impact type space, what each business is going to do is going to look completely different and unique to them based on what their sector is, what their product service is, and who's in the leadership team and who's in the staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great way to approach it as well, finding what is that root reason to explore this. I wonder, something we again find a lot is people who, because of the scope of the topic, struggle perhaps to find that starting point, or think that because so much work is going to be required in terms of process, policy change, etc. Are there any particular objections you often receive, and do you have a mechanism for overcoming them?
What you say there, that's a familiar thing that I hear time and again, is we just don't know where to start. We don't know what steps to take. And so for me, that's about breaking it down and saying, okay, well, what are the simple things we can do first to get going? Let's not try and eat an elephant, which always seems like the wrong metaphor in this space, but there's loads we're going to do. This is a journey. This is a journey that's going to take place over several years. So let's break it down into what we're going to do in the first 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. What's all the stuff that, yes, we'd love to do, but right now we're not in the right place for that. That's too ambitious. Let's park it in phases 4 and 5 or whatever it is. So let's break it down and make it manageable. I mean, the objection that I would, whilst it depresses me to say it, the objection that I hear a lot is around the business case and how can we justify the time and financial investment in this? Does the business case stack up? How are we going to justify this to investors? There are some things you can do though that make sense from the very beginning, especially in terms of shifting energy. A lot of if you shift to a sustainable renewable energy supply, that can often be cheaper than a more traditional energy supply. Equally, if you start using less electricity by switching things off at night so that they're not on standby, by shifting to LED lighting, as soon as you reduce your sort of the amount of energy you're using, that will automatically reduce the amount of money you're spending on energy at the same time. It's the same with stripping waste out of processes. If you can strip out wastage out of your supply chain, that is likely to save you money. So there's a financial benefit there as well as a sustainability benefit. And so often it can make sense to start, they might not be some of your foundational things, there might be some things that are harder in there, especially some of the sort of supply chain changes, but try and bring those, sort of front load those into your plans so that you're getting a bit of momentum going, you're seeing the financial benefit as well as the sustainability benefit earlier on. Tackle some of the stuff that is harder and maybe is going to require more investment, sort of do that at a later stage and get the momentum going first.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And I wonder, we touched on it a moment ago, but I think there's the real sense of the push and pull. So there's businesses who are starting to take action, and that has a potential to drive agenda and government policy that you mentioned. And then I think, as you said, there's government policy that then changes and might shift the mindset of some of those leaders, even when it comes to things like incentives for greener energy, for energy reduction. Do you see there being an increasing trend in those policy decisions over the next few years?
Interesting. I had exactly the same discussion with a group of accountants last Friday. I think we will. I mean, I can't see how we won't see changes at a policy level and at a regulation level, because I think often that is needed to drive change. That said, we are also seeing increasing scrutiny and demand from the stakeholders we talked about before, in terms of consumers, employees, within procurement processes, from investors. I think investors in particular is a really interesting space, and if the ESG frameworks are genuinely scrutinizing whether businesses are doing the right thing, and they are looking at that sort of real integrated benefit, and they are genuinely looking for impact, and the funds then flow to the organizations that are operating in a more responsible, sustainable way, that I think will be one of the biggest drivers of change, because the reality is that money talks. If you can access borrowing at a lower rate because you've got a better ESG profile, if you can access certain types of investment that you would otherwise be blocked to you because you're operating in a more sustainable way, that's going to drive change. And I think that will drive change with leaders who might not be influenced by the moral argument, and then you might not need regulation because the market will be doing it for you.
Absolutely. And I think that investment piece is fascinating. I'm sure it's very interesting from the accounting point of view also. It's definitely something that we've noticed in terms of impact investment and where some of those funds are coming from, and actually whether that is policy and public driven or whether that is private sector investment funds for impact. I think it was just yesterday perhaps something that Al Gore's investment fund was investing in the clean tech space. So I suppose there's a lot of private equity which now also has that agenda.
Yeah, and I think what's tricky is that we've not got standardization at the moment around what good looks like and how we're measuring impact. And I think that's going to be important, because there's a risk again of greenwashing or smoke and mirrors. And if we want to see, we need to see genuine change. In order to tackle climate change, we cannot have smoke and mirrors. We need to see genuine change, and we need therefore to have measures which are enabling investors, consumers, employees to know whether the businesses that are actually doing what they're saying. And we need to have figures which are really robust and potentially being audited, so that we know that we can trust them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that measurement piece is so critical. The old what gets measured gets done, but also going beyond the platitude, I suppose, and actually there's schemes and accreditations to sign up to, but in terms of that annual reporting and actually breaking down those metrics, I imagine that's where some of the businesses who are perhaps a little bit lost on that journey would really benefit from the advice you could provide.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I think it's an important part of the journey. There's so many different things to talk about, to tackle. There's the doing it, then there's the measuring it, there's the leadership mindset change, there's innovation and the fact that you might need to do different things, innovate your products and services, look at potentially new business models and moving into new sectors. It's having a plan to tackle all of those. You've got the communication and marketing piece, so your whole area. And how do you then talk about this to your consumers, employees in a way that is effective? So lots of different sort of streams and areas to be looking at in order to deliver this. And it's important that you're kind of looking across the whole piece and doing them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think so the last big one from me, I always ask this, I think we've spoken about how myriad the challenges, but also what those opportunities are. For companies perhaps a little bit earlier in their sustainability journey, or potentially even smaller businesses than the ones you might work with now, is there one single piece of advice you would give them, or where would you maybe highlight for them to begin their journey?
I think there's an education piece and an awareness piece. There are a lot of facts out there. There's a lot of scientific basis to back up the things that we need to do. If every person within the business, if everyone within a leadership position upskills themselves and increases their understanding around what the main drivers of climate change are and what the main things are that we can do about them, I think that will start to precipitate some conversations around what individual businesses can do and what the different types of change that they need to deliver are. So, for example, Project Drawdown have got a fantastic set of videos, which are 90 minutes of videos in 6 modules, I think it is. And actually, if everybody watched those 90 minutes, it's very practical. It walks you through the steps of here's the data, here's where all the problem is being driven from. Here are some technologies that already exist that we can do to tackle this. This is how we could go about delivering it right now. If everyone in the business were to watch that, I think that could then really fuel some exciting conversations about what next.
Yeah, I love that. The education piece, I think, is so important. And like you say, just a few really high value resources, if we could get those in front of everyone, that would be fantastic. And then last of all, what's next for you? What's going to be keeping you busy these next few months?
Well, at the moment, I've just embarked on a course at the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership. So that's definitely going to be keeping me busy, meeting some great people from all around the world who are all passionate about sustainability, really expanding my thinking around what businesses can do to change, and learning from that, and then being able to take those learnings and apply them straight away within businesses that I'm working with. That's what I'm excited about, and it's definitely going to keep me busy.
Fantastic. Well, really good luck with the course, and really good luck with those next steps as well. A big thanks again for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thanks to Hannah for her time today. I think some great lessons about looking at the bigger picture, but breaking it down into manageable chunks so that you can get started today. If you've been inspired to take action, it would be great if you could like this video and leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to stay in touch for future sustainability sessions, please subscribe to this channel. Thank you for listening.